When someone with an avoidant attachment style begins to pull away, right as connection deepens, it feels personal. It feels like rejection. But psychologically, something very different is happening. For avoidant individuals, emotional closeness does not automatically register as safety. Research on avoidant attachment consistently shows that intimacy activates stress rather than comfort. The closer the bond becomes, the more their nervous system shifts into self-protection. This is not a conscious choice. It is a learned response shaped long before you entered their life. When emotional stakes are low, avoidance can appear relaxed, charming, even consistent. But when real attachment forms, when someone starts to matter, internal alarms activate. Their system interprets closeness as loss of control. Dependence feels dangerous. Needing someone feels like exposure. So when feelings intensify, the avoidant doesn't lean in. They regulate distress by creating distance. Pulling back is how they restore emotional equilibrium. What you experience as abandonment is, for them, a way to breathe again. This is why their withdrawal often appears sudden and confusing. Nothing externally went wrong. The shift happens internally. The bond crossed a threshold their psychology was not prepared to tolerate. Understanding this does not excuse the pain it causes, but it reframes the behavior. Distance is not proof you mattered less. In many cases, it is evidence that the connection reached a depth their system learned to fear. Why love triggers fear instead of safety? For an avoidant, love does not land in the body as warmth or reassurance. It lands as threat. Decades of attachment research show that avoidant attachment develops when early caregivers are emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or dismissive. Over time, the child adapts by learning one core rule. Closeness is unreliable, and needing others is risky. Emotional self-sufficiency becomes a survival strategy, not a personality trait. So, when love appears in adulthood, it collides with this deeply wired system. Intimacy begins to activate the same physiological stress responses, once triggered by unmet needs. The body reacts before the mind can reason. Heart rate increases, anxiety rises, a sense of internal pressure builds. What feels safe to others feels destabilizing to them. Love introduces dependency. Dependency introduces uncertainty. And uncertainty revives old fears of disappointment, loss, and helplessness. Even when the present relationship is healthy, the nervous system responds as if the past is repeating. This is why reassurance alone doesn't fix the distancing. The reaction isn't logical, it's conditioned. Their adult awareness may recognize that closeness is healthy, but their emotional system reacts as if vulnerability equals danger. Pulling away isn't about rejecting connection. It's an attempt to silence fear by restoring distance, the one state that once kept them safe. The identity collapse. Behind their distance. When an avoidant falls for you, the fear is not only emotional, it is existential. Avoidant attachment is often built around a carefully maintained identity, independent, self-reliant, emotionally controlled. This self-image is not superficial. It functions as psychological armor. It protects them from vulnerability by convincing them they do not need deep emotional bonds to be whole. Falling in love threatens that identity. Needing someone exposes a contradiction they are not prepared to face. If they can be affected by your presence or absence, then the story they have lived by begins to unravel. They are no longer the person who can walk away untouched. They are no longer in full control. And for someone whose safety has depended on control, this realization is deeply destabilizing. This creates intense internal dissonance. One part of them is drawn toward you. Another part is fighting to preserve the identity that kept them emotionally safe for years. Distance becomes a way to repair that fracture. By pulling away, they attempt to prove to themselves that they are still independent, still unbound, still protected. What looks like emotional coldness is often an identity crisis in motion. They are not just withdrawing from you, they are trying to restore a version of themselves that feels familiar and safe, even if it costs them the connection they secretly want. The push-pull war. You're trapped inside. What you experience as mixed signals is not confusion about you. It is conflict within them. Avoidant attachment creates a split response to intimacy. One system is activated by connection, desire, and genuine care. Another system is activated by threat, self-protection, and emotional shutdown. These systems do not cooperate, they compete. This is why the avoidant can feel warm, open, and present one moment, then distant or unreachable the next. When closeness increases, desire pulls them toward you. But as soon as vulnerability crosses a threshold, fear takes control and demands retreat. The result is a push-pull pattern that feels destabilizing to be on the receiving end of. This behavior is not strategic. It is reactive. Each moment of closeness soothes the longing, but it also intensifies the fear of dependence. Each withdrawal reduces anxiety, but it amplifies longing. They oscillate because neither side ever fully wins. For you, this creates emotional whiplash. Moments of connection generate hope. Moments of distance generate self-doubt. But the inconsistency is not a reflection of your worth or your behavior. It is the visible outcome of an internal battle they do not know how to resolve. You are not experiencing indecision. You are witnessing psychological conflict. Why distance makes their feelings stronger. Avoidant withdrawal is often driven by a powerful belief that space will make the feelings fade. If they can just create enough distance, the emotional intensity will settle and they'll return to a state of control. But psychologically, the opposite tends to happen. Attachment research shows that suppressing emotional closeness does not erase attachment bonds. It deprives the nervous system of regulation while leaving the bond intact. When the avoidant removes contact, they also remove the very cues that help them feel momentarily grounded. What remains is longing without relief. Distance eliminates immediate anxiety, but it amplifies internal preoccupation. Without interaction, the mind fills the gap. Thoughts become repetitive. Regret grows louder. The absence sharpens awareness of what was lost rather than dissolving it. This creates a painful contradiction. The strategy meant to reduce attachment deepens it. They think about you more, not less. They feel the weight of the connection without the safety of your presence. And because avoidants are not practiced at processing longing, the emotions feel even more overwhelming in isolation. Yet, instead of interpreting this as a signal to reconnect, many double down on distance. They mistake intensified feeling for proof that closeness is dangerous, reinforcing the very cycle that keeps them stuck. Distance doesn't cure the attachment, it traps them inside it. What this means for you and the cost of waiting. Understanding avoidant psychology can bring clarity, but clarity should not become self-abandonment. It is tempting to interpret their fear as something you can outwait or heal through patience. But attachment research is clear on one thing. Insight alone does not change attachment patterns. Avoidant distancing only shifts when the person actively engages in self-awareness, emotional regulation, and relational repair. Without that effort, the cycle repeats. Waiting indefinitely often places you in a position of emotional suspension. You stay hopeful while your needs go unmet. You remain available while consistency remains uncertain. Over time, this imbalance quietly erodes your sense of security and self-trust. Their fear explains their behavior, but it does not obligate you to accept chronic distance. Compassion does not require endurance of emotional absence. You're allowed to need clarity, presence, and reciprocity. The most painful truth is this: love alone does not resolve avoidance. No amount of understanding can substitute for their willingness to face vulnerability. If they are not actively moving toward connection, waiting becomes a form of self-sacrifice disguised as loyalty. Recognizing this is not a failure of empathy. It is an act of self-respect. You can understand why they pulled away and still choose not to disappear with them.